From NOLA with the Forstalls. This is Chats with Chip. One-on-one conversations with my father, mentor, and hero, Chip Forstall. He's an attorney and a lover of all things New Orleans, here to share his expertise and opinions with you. What's up, New Orleans? Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Forstall, in our special segment, Chats with Chip, where I sit down with my father, Chip Forstall, founder of our law firm, and I pick his brain about different areas, different topics. And we also have our second segment, if you haven't checked it out, Local Legends, where I get New Orleans legends, exactly that. People that have a story, people that have grit, grind, entrepreneurs, musicians, artists, you name it. Anybody with a story, check out that segment. It's a great piece. So today for our Chats with Chip, we're going to go behind the scenes a little bit. We're going to kind of take a look behind what it takes to run a law firm in the specific category of why we can't take every case. When we want to help somebody and we just can't, right? And there's so many different reasons why. First is obviously liability.
Yeah, for people who don't understand liability is just as simple as who's at fault in the accident. Mm-hmm. In every case has a little nuance to it and stuff. So you have to really be able to dig deep into the facts. That's why I'm very hesitant right off the bat to tell people they have no case. Somebody calls up, and a lot of times I'll get them to come in anyway, even if I think there may not be a case, so I can sit down with them and get all the details. But the real simple fact is if you run a red light and it's a camera that shows you ran a red light, I mean, you can't collect because you were at fault in the accident. Those cases are pretty much open and shut. The ones that you can prove, they're pretty clear cut. So that's easy. If my client had a stop sign, the other person didn't have a stop sign, you think, okay, the other person's not at fault. My client's at fault for the stop sign. But a nuance. One time I had a case, a guy had a stop sign, but the defendant was actually in the parking lane, going down the parking lane. Mm-hmm. Now, all the other traffic on the street was stopped, but the defendant was going down the parking lane. We were able to help. So you really have to look at every single case as it comes in. And that's why we'll even get you in when we're not even sure if there's a case, there's a possibility of a case. Because I want to be thorough, because it is important to people when they get involved in an accident, need somebody to help them and stuff. A lot of our clients don't have collision. So they get involved in an accident. It's, whose fault is it? But their car is damaged and the car doesn't drive. They have problems that they're hurt. Well, so real simple, who's at fault? If you can determine who's at fault, makes the case real easy. As soon as it's at fault, we know we could spot those right off the bat. Somebody ran into the rear of our client. I had a case recently where the guy ran a red light. My client said she had the green light. He said he had the green light. Oh, lo and behold, there was a crime camera right there. We were able to get the video from the crime camera, showed that our client did have the green light and the defendant had the red light. Right. Those are pretty easy. The hard ones are where you have a red light case and there's no witnesses. And everybody says they have a green light.
It's when liability, when you believe your client, believing versus proving, right? Because
the bird, I tell people all the time, if I was a judge, I'd award you the money, but I'm not the judge. When you file a lawsuit, the person filing a lawsuit has to win by a preponderance of the evidence. It's not 99% sure like criminal cases, but you have to win by preponderance. So you have to be 51% that you can prove
more likely than not
that the other person is at fault. And on a red light case where there's no witnesses and stuff, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, and I think
and there's other cases and stuff that involve not just red lights. The other one that comes into mind is a side-by-side swipe. He came into my lane, he came into my lane, no, he came into her lane. And again, word versus word. I recommend to all my clients for less than $50, maybe $90, $80, you can get a dash cam. You put your dash cam in the car and guess what? You're not at fault. The dash cam shows it. Boom, done. Case over with and stuff. In fact, we had a case recently where our client got killed. But the defendant driver, who was a truck driver, had a dash cam in his truck facing him, and guess what? He had fallen asleep at the wheel. But if he didn't have that dash cam, it would have been hard for us to prove the case.
Right. So how do you deal with clients where, if it's a red light case, you believe them, it's an old client, you've known them, or it's a friend?
I never want to give anybody false hope.
True.
I hate telling people no, but I really don't want to give anybody false hope because at the end of the case and stuff, you can't collect. I'd rather be upfront with them. And I have to tell you, I'll be honest with you, very rarely when I finish explaining to people, they understand. People are much smarter than people give credit for and stuff. They understand. And I tell them, I said, well, how are we going to prove the case? And I explained to them about the judge and stuff. And they're not sure. They can't give me an answer. And then I tell them, look, if you want to get an idea, go see somebody else. I may not have all the answers, but we cover all the base. We get video, we get the cameras. And if there's any crime cameras, we get those. I've actually had clients go out and put a sign out by an intersection said, did you witness an accident on this day between these two cars? Because people drive. I mean, we do everything we can to try to help the client. But if you can't, you owe them a duty and obligation to tell them, I cannot handle your case.
Yeah, and sometimes I get from the client, we have to prove their case, right? Like you said. And I say, well, look, you got a red light accident. It's your word versus their word. How do you prove it? And the client says, well, that's your job. And,
it is our job, but we need a witness.
Can't make something up. Right?
No, we need a witness.
Right.
You need a witness because you and the other person, the only two people that are witnesses, you can't beat the burden.
Right.
That's the problem.
And so besides dash camera, witnesses. Right?
I know it's next coming. I'm going to tell you what the other big thing is right now.
What's that?
It's the big thing is this is a heartbreaker. My client gets involved in an accident. Their car's totaled. They're injured. They have no insurance. Guess what? They can't collect. The law used to be you couldn't collect for the first $15,000 for your bodily injury claim, and I believe it was $25,000 for your property damage. So if you didn't have insurance, you couldn't collect the first $15,000. So if you're sitting on a $10,000 car and it got totaled, or a $15,000 car and you got totaled and you don't have insurance, you can't collect, even though the other person's at fault.
Yes, and a lot of people don't know that.
They don't know that and stuff. And I tell my clients all the time, I mean, you got to pay your rent, you got to pay your light bill, but you really need to pay your car insurance because what happens is you get involved in a wreck and it's not your fault. Right. It's the other person's fault, but you don't have insurance, you can't collect. Wait, it gets worse. The last legislative session, our wonderful legislator decided that $15,000 wasn't enough. They went to $100,000. So you can't collect the first $100,000 of your damages. Now think about it. So you got involved in a bad wreck, a tractor trailer hits you.
Not your fault.
Not your fault. And you got a hospital bill of $25,000 and you got a case that's worth $50,000. You can't collect. Now the $15,000 I understand because the minimum limits for Louisiana are $15,000. Right. I don't particularly like it, but I understand it. I understand the rationale. But guess what they didn't do? They didn't raise the minimum limits.
Why do you think why do you think they did not raise the limits?
Because the insurance companies don't want them to. That's why. It's all money. It's all insurance companies. They got these people in their back pockets. And I'm going to tell you right now, legislators out there, I know you're in the back pocket of insurance companies, got to fight it every day and stuff, and y'all have no clue what goes on and how they cheat people. Sorry, but I just don't get me started on that because it really sticks in my craw. We've tried to go, the trial lawyers have tried to go and raise the limits from $15,000 to $25,000. The insurance companies fight it because then it means they have to pay more. So if you get involved in an accident and you go to the hospital and your bill's $7,000 or $8,000 from the hospital, and there's only $15,000 worth of coverage. How about this? You get involved in an accident, your arm's broken, your eye's put out. Now, a person only has $15,000 doesn't go anywhere. It's been that way for 25 years and stuff. Just inflation. Right. Put it at 25.
Well, it's gotten to the point where, a hospital visit. Oh, your $15,000 is going from a hospital visit.
Absolutely.
And private equity came down, bought up Ochsner and LCMC and raised the rates.
So it's so unfair. And the problem is the little guys have no voice, and the insurance companies have all the money. And if you go look at the legislators, how much money they get from big corporations and insurance companies, chock full of that. And it is what it is. It's not a whole lot we can do. That's why I tell people you got to get insurance. The other thing you got to get. Now we're on the subject real quick is uninsured motorists. So the other person, because sometimes the other person doesn't have insurance, so you get involved in a wreck, and if you don't have uninsured motorists and the other person has no insurance, guess what? You can't collect. Well, let's sue the guy. I have in the past.
Yeah, sue him
I've sued him 10 times, 10 different people. Guess how much money I've ever collected?
$0.
Zero. I sued an attorney one time. This is a true story. This is before you were a baby. I sued an attorney one time who didn't have insurance. Kept telling me she had insurance, she She never had insurance. I got a default judgment against her and stuff. She wouldn't answer the petition. I got the default judgment. I said, I got a default judgment. Just show me your insurance. I'll let it go by the side. I just want to get collect by my clients. Turns out she finally said, I don't have insurance. I didn't have insurance. I went to go collect. She went bankrupt. She went bankrupt. An attorney. I'm like, really? Anyway, I get excited because I don't like unfairness and stuff. But
and it sounds like a lot of it's coming down to affecting the people.
The regular people.
The people who go, the policyholders.
The people who work at the grocery store, the people who are your waitresses and stuff, the people who are washing your cars, the people who are work in retail stores. It's the regular Joe. Right. I got a ton of uninsured motorists because if you hit me, I want to be able to collect for my damages because, I don't want to get hurt and not be able to collect. But I can do that because I'm in the business and I've made a couple of dollars and I'm okay. But the regular Joe, insurance is a problem and stuff because it's high and they always want to blame us. It's not us. There's a good 25% of the people in the city of New Orleans do not have insurance. Then the problem is you got a bunch of people only have $15,000 policies and stuff. And the problem with that is that, like you said, the $15,000 doesn't cover much anymore. Just everything's sky high. So one of the solutions there's two solutions. One is to raise the limits to $2,550. And the number two thing, which is hard on people, but you start impounding the cars for the people who don't have insurance, to take them off the road, and then everybody's got insurance, and the rates would go down. But again, the legislature won't do that either. Yeah. They just protecting the big guys.
Big guys who have got them in their pocket, right?
Yeah. So again, get insurance on your car. You can all you got to do is carry the minimum. It's not that expensive. Uninsured motorists, except for one insurance company, I won't mention the name. Their insurance is high. They do that on purpose. So they don't have to pay out uninsured motorist claims. Most insurance companies, the uninsured motorist is a couple of $100 a year. That's important to get in case the other person doesn't have insurance or doesn't have enough insurance, you can collect.
And just so y'all know, he said 25% of people in New Orleans are driving around without insurance. That's a 1 in 4 chance.
Yes.
If you get hit.
Happens every day in this office.
We see it every day.
At least once a week.
It's disheartening because the people that, again, they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't know.
My client has insurance, but my client doesn't have UM. It doesn't have uninsured motorists, and my client doesn't have collision. My client's scred.
Yes, there's nothing we can do.
I mean, you can file suit against the person.
Again, you get zero.
Yeah, well, that's the problem and stuff. Because the guy can skip on you. The guy for $500 could go down to bankruptcy. Couldn't declare bankruptcy instead of having to pay you $15,000.
Well, and to explain to the people, if you have a judgment against someone, if they file for bankruptcy,
the judgment's dismissed.
Right.
The judgment's
in most
dismissed.
cases, right?
Yes, you can't dismiss an intentional act. Like if I physically attack you. You assume you get a judgment. You cannot dismiss that in bankruptcy court. But automobile accidents, you can get dismissed. Yeah. So if a guy's sitting there, he's making minimum. And that's the other thing. What about a guy's making minimum wage or making $15 an hour? I mean, you're going to do what? Garnish his, guess what happens? I've done this before. I've garnished his wages. Guess what he did? He quit the job and went to get another job.
Then you go on to chase
around again and stuff. I've done that a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I got a couple of judgments that I was probably 10, 15 years old. I felt so bad for the people. Still haven't collected. I recorded them. So the guy ever buys a house, but the guy who doesn't have insurance, and he's driving a 20-year-old car and he's working at McDonald's.
Right.
He's not buying.
And I always tell people if they don't have enough money to pay their car insurance, how are they going to pay a judgment?
Yeah, they're not.
They're not.
So
let's move on to the second piece of why we don't take a case: damages.
Oh.
And this happens. This is a little more sensitive, but
tough.
Low damages versus high effort.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say, for example, you got a brush on your arm, but in order for us to prove, you got a scrape on your arm, whatever, something that wasn't a big injury. And yes, it's an injury. Yes, it's worth something. But to get to where we need to go, to collect on that, you're going to spend $10,000, $15,000, whatever it is, $10,000, $15,000 litigating it on a $5,000, $10,000 claim. That's tough.
That's the big thing for insurance companies nowadays. Again, there's arguments and stuff, but when there's no damage, I had two cars one time hit mirror to mirror, and one of the mirrors had a scrape on it. And I looked at the client. I said, "You really want to go down this road?" I said, "Because it's going to be hard to prove. It's going to be hard for the judge to understand how you got hurt." Now, let me tell you something. We have people who actually do accident reconstruction, who do biomechanical engineer guys who will actually come in with this rear end collision, because rear end collisions are a little bit different because the bumpers, each one have like 5-10 mile an hour bumpers. So two bumpers hit to be virtually little damage, but the impact, the G-force is pretty good. When you get side by side, so I tell people, be careful, because you don't want to be one of these people that has a claim history from all these
Yeah, one a year.
Minor accidents. And all of a sudden you get a really good accident. I mean, an accident where there's a lot of damage and you hurt pretty bad. They look at your claims history and they say, man, they bring it up to the jury. Look, he's made all these claims before and stuff. So those conversations are very, very careful because you don't want to turn somebody away if they have a legitimate claim, but you also don't want to encourage people to make frivolous claims.
Right.
Because there's a lot of lawyers out there who'll do that because they need the money and blah, 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 blah. We don't do that. We've never done that. We never will do that. I'm just not going to do it and stuff because my reputation means everything to me and stuff. So, we're real careful with that. And again, some of the stuff you're talking about, I have filed suit over $500 before.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't offer me the right amount of money. And I will file suit because I never want to get a reputation for settling out cases cheap. You would take $500, next time it's $750, next time it's $1,000. We don't do that stuff. We have a reputation. We get the most dollars you can from a case. And if we have to file suit for $500 and stuff, we do it.
Yep.
And again, I've had my lawyers come to me and say, well, we got to file suit, it's just $500 and stuff. And I said, it's not about the money. It's the principle at this point in time and stuff. And it does mean something to the clients because again, most of the time when you file suit, they'll pay you more money. But again, risk, effort, time, because, cases take longer and stuff, costs, they take longer and stuff. But we try real hard to get the maximum amount of dollars and stuff. And the insurance companies know that if you don't pay us the right amount of money, we will file suit. I believe most of my clients, I believe most of them, all of them. And maybe it's the fault. People say it is. Some people in the office say it is.
Well, and you deal with a lot of people, so
but I do, and I can tell, I can tell.
People.
And then the other problem is, like you said before, is I got the clients who come in and been with me for 30 years. I mean, telling them no is like freaking pulling teeth. I mean, because it's like, they're loyal beyond belief. They're like family and stuff. I mean, it's hard to tell family
let's
no.
talk about like those different kind of incidents, like maybe a slip and fall or a premise liability. There's cases that take a little more work.
Not a little.
A lot.
A lot more work.
A lot more work.
Right.
Work. So, when a person comes in and they stub their toe, and we want to sue the hospital.
Yeah, I had a case with exactly something similar happened and stuff. They didn't trip and fall. They just hit their foot on a mat and stuff, and they stumbled a little bit. And I'm like, nah, it may be worth something. And I'll tell you the truth. We've done this a lot of times. We've told people we'll help you. I'll help you. But I'm not filing suit on the case because, again, like you said, the case is worth $3,000 and I got to put in $10,000 worth of effort on a $3,000 case. It doesn't make sense. I've had cases, and don't hold me to this for everything and stuff, but I've had cases where they've offered, $1,500, $2,000 and stuff. Maybe the case is worth another $500 or something. I've told the client, I'll take the money, won't take a fee, and I'll get you the next case. Because the effort is not worth, the effort you have to put out, the money you have to put out is not worth the return. But I will help them. I've had cases where before I've told them what to do. Bad food cases. Mm-hmm. I tell them exactly what to do. They're not worth $750, maybe $1,000. So we may not handle it, but I'll tell them, you go do this. And when they respond, I'll tell you what to do. And we help them that way. Remember, everything's about helping people. Doesn't mean I'm going to file suit on everything. Right. So I've told people before, I will help you. I'll help handle your case, but I'm not filing suit.
Right. And we don't charge them anything. It's just, again, just help people.
Them because, again, from a business point of view, when you get involved in a good accident, they're going to say, well, gee whiz, Chip Forstall took care of me, and he didn't charge me a fee. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you something. Very few lawyers out there do that. Most of them, they got overhead. They got to make a living, thank God for us, because we've been around so long that we've got all that covered and stuff. We have a really good practice, and we can afford to do that. A lot of lawyers can't afford to do that. We can.
The business side, kind of the overall picture of running the law firm in terms of the financials, the ebbs and flows, and not getting into specifics.
I was going to say that could be a 2-hour conversation. Maybe get started.
But basically overall, and how that can affect taking certain cases or taking
It doesn't affect us too much because what happens is a lot of the smaller guys, the guys who don't have the wherewithal, can't finance cases. We can finance cases. The good news, 46 years been around and stuff. I have no debt. We got,
So let's talk about a case that, for example, a automobile trucking case that bad injuries, lifelong injuries, not a death. But, let's say it takes 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years. You can spend,
and how much?
You can spend $30,000 of our money on it. $30,000 out of pocket. And that's not even doctor bills. That's just expert reports, deposition costs, filing fees, I mean, it just takes
Just the litigation.
just the litigation
costs.
part takes that much because you're fighting a trucking company, you're fighting a company that's got unlimited amount of money and stuff. Insurance companies have unlimited amount of money, and you get a big case and stuff. And again, remember, the bigger the cases, the more they fight because they want to hold on to their money as long as they can. So the finance part is important and stuff. I have lawyers who are friends of mine who don't have big operations, and when they get a pretty decent sized case, they'll bring it over to us and stuff for us to handle it because we got the lawyers, we got the financing. We got the experts. We got all the things you need.
The whole infrastructure.
To handle a big case and stuff. Those I call the bread and butter stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff that gets turned over relatively quickly. The stuff that pays for the lights, pays for the salaries, and keeps the office running and stuff. And I've been very fortunate. God's been good to me that I have a real good mixture of small cases and big cases and stuff. And that's the best. I know a couple of guys who have nothing but big cases, and it's hilarious because they have to go to the bank to borrow the money from big case to big case. So they borrow the money. They get a big case, they pay off the loans, and they got to start borrowing money again and stuff, and they never can get ahead.
Upside down, yeah.
And we've never been like that. We have money coming in every day. We have it's a good practice.
So let's talk a little bit about how those big cases. Why do they take so long?
Well, a couple of reasons. One reason is because the people who get hurt, you can't settle a case where a big case. Most of the time, you can't settle them. If it's a death case, it's different, but a person's hurt, you have to get them proper treatment. You can't just go out and settle the case fast because they have a bad disc in their back. Well, if you go settle it and all of a sudden 6 months later they need surgery, guess what? There's nobody to pay for the surgery. So we never rush those cases and stuff. I mean, I never wanted to go settle a case because I need the money and stuff. And that's, again, some benefit that you have coming out of somebody like us because we don't need to settle a case to make payroll. We just don't.
Your decision's not made on the fee,
my immediate needs and stuff. They're made on what's best for the client. So that's number one. So it's treatment. So if a person has surgery, perfect example and stuff. Person has surgery. You just had one recently. You know who that is.
Yep.
And she had the surgery, but she had a bad result. 5 months later, she had to go back and have the surgery all over again. Okay, to fix it. So if I would have settled the case after the first surgery and stuff, there would be nobody to pay for the second surgery. So I always make sure in the big cases, I always talk to the clients myself and say, how you feeling? Where are you? What does the doctor have to say to make sure we don't settle them quickly? Now, insurance companies, they want to hold on to their money as long as they can. Insurance companies, think about this. They have $1 billion, what they call reserve, which is money set aside to pay claims. And they don't pay a claim for 2 years. They make 12 to 14% on that money.
Wow.
So they've made on $1 billion, they made $120 million the first year. They made $120 million in the second year. So now, instead of having $1 billion, so to speak, you take out the 240, they're only putting up $750 million to pay those claims because they made interest on the money. They have a benefit to them to delay.
Yeah,
that's why we always try to move the cases along. What I call is we file a lawsuit, do the discovery. The client's in the process of getting surgery, get to the point of maximum medical improvement. And we set a motion to set a trial, get trial dates, and push the trial dates off, get everything set up. Because what happens is those big cases usually don't settle until 60 days, a month before trial. Because again, insurance companies want to hold on to their money. It's just, it's trade economics. And I understand it. I mean, I don't like it, but I understand it and stuff.
It's business,
that's where our job is to get the trial date set as fast as we possibly can to be properly prepared. Because again, when you're talking about big case, you're talking about experts, accident reconstructions, life care planners, vocational rehabilitation. I mean, those guys, how much the last life plan? I mean, how much?
It's over $10,000.
Yeah. So I mean, that's where we talk about the money comes in and stuff. So you have to have all that stuff. So you have to have all that stuff in place. But again, those cases are worth, $750 to $3 million and stuff.
And lastly, is you kind of talked about this, but the no insurance. We see again 25% of people in New Orleans
at least
driving around with no insurance. 1 in 4 chance.
Yes.
Getting hit by somebody with no insurance.
And that's why uninsured motorists is relatively cheap. And I tell people, uninsured motorists is to do nothing but protect you. All it takes for one accident. The person didn't have insurance, and if you have uninsured motorists, you can collect for your injuries, and that'll pay your insurance premiums for years.
Yep. So let's ask this question: If someone came in with a accident where they didn't have uninsured motorists, they got hit by somebody with either no insurance or their policy, whatever, the policy lapse, there was no coverage. But you found out that the person that hit him actually had assets and something that you could sink your teeth into. Would that change your mind whether you take the case?
Depends on how real the assets are.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how real the assets are. If the guy owns his house outright, yes, I would. Tell you something else we do for people who don't have insurance, the defendants who don't have insurance, we'll send a copy of the police report to the Department of Public Safety with a copy of the police report saying this person didn't have insurance. And guess what happens? That person gets put a flag on his license.
And then what happens?
They can't get their license renewed until they pay the claim. You put an amount of the money that the claim
Pay the whole
is in.
claim.
Yeah, but that's never worked. So people just drive with no license. You have no idea.
So
what
it
goes
makes,
on out
yeah,
there.
it throws a monkey
But the
wrench
answer
in.
is, yeah, I have. You can do that. I had a case where, again, a guy thought he was being cute, and we got a judgment against him and stuff. And guess what happened? Guy wanted to go to law school.
Oh,
Guess what happened?
Oh,
Guess what happened? We ended up collecting. He ended up having to pay. So, yeah, so it happens every now and then, but not often.
So what if somebody, let's say somebody got hit.
And again, that guy was just so arrogant and stupid beforehand.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what if, let's say someone gets hit and they got a really bad injury? And there's actually a case that I'm thinking of, a really bad injury where, got lifelong either scarring or lifelong injuries, lifelong care. But the person who hit him only has a very small $15,000 policy. And you, again, find out that they have a lot of assets, right? You have a $15,000 policy, and someone that hits you has.
We had a case like that where the guy had. I mean, it was amazing. This guy's a business person, and he owned his house. It was a nice house, about a $500,000 house and stuff. And we filed suit, and you get him to pay. Which is crazy with people. You can't collect the first 15 because you have to wait because they want, when the insurance company pays the 15, they want to release.
Right.
But if the person's got bad injuries and stuff, we'll make them pay. I mean, let me tell you, if there's a way to collect for my client, I'm going to do it.
Right.
I really don't care how hard it is and stuff, but they have to have the ability to collect. If they can't pay, there's no way this person's going to pay. Then I don't want to waste my time. But the person has what I call real assets. Because let me tell you, there's all kind of people out there driving a Mercedes and got a big house. And the car is leased and the house is mortgaged up to the hilt and stuff. That's not real money. Right. Real money is the guy who's driving around in a car that's paid for and has got a house that's paid for.
Right.
I have, on occasion, and the damages weren't too bad, I've written the person, the defendant, and said, look, my client wants you to just collect for the property damage. It's only $1,500. Would you like to pay? If you don't, they're going to.
Or the person didn't have insurance?
The person who didn't defend it, I've done that before. Can you pay my client's property damage and stuff? Otherwise, your license is going to be suspended. And I explained to them the law about the Department of Public Safety. We've actually had people pay on that sometimes. I mean, you can't collect any injury. We don't make any money, but, again,
put a little pressure on them.
Put a little pressure on them. And I tell them we're not filing suit,
right?
But I'll send a letter.
Right.
Okay.
Try to help them out a little bit.
Yeah, help them out a little bit and stuff like that.
Well, it sounds like we need another podcast on your gripes with the insurance company.
Oh, that would.
How long do we have?
Not enough time. I can tell y'all so many stories about how horrible they are. They made a client to sign a release saying it was a property damage release that just happened a while back. They pay people off at the scenes. It's horrible.
All right, so there it is. Tune back next week. We'll be talking about insurance companies. We'll do a special podcast where we talk all behind the scenes about what it takes to, deal with the insurance companies. Thanks for tuning in. Check back next week. From NOLA with the Forstalls is presented by Jonathan and Chip Forstall. Executive producer, Mona Lisa Johnson, Sierra Media Productions. Host, Jonathan Forstall. Casting director, Jonathan Thomas, Ascension Branding and Marketing. Post-production editor and voiceover talent, Matt Pawlowski, Redline Studios in New York City. Produced by Ascension Branding and Marketing and Sierra Media Productions. Thanks for listening.